Most people believe control happens through force, through money, through authority, through violence. That belief is why they are easy to dominate. Control almost never begins outside the mind. It begins with perception, with habits of thought that quietly train a person to submit long before anyone ever tells them to. The most dangerous prison is not physical, it's psychological. And the majority of people are living inside one without realizing the door was never locked. From an early age, you are conditioned to obey invisible rules, speak at the right time, want the right things, measure success the way everyone else does, fear being different more than being mediocre. These rules are never written down, but they are enforced relentlessly through social pressure. And once they're internalized, control becomes automatic, no chains required. Psychology shows that human beings don't resist control when it feels familiar. They resist only when it feels foreign. That's why the most effective systems of domination don't rely on punishment. They rely on normalization. If everyone around you accepts weakness as normal, then strength feels dangerous. If everyone around you chases approval, independence feels antisocial. If everyone around you complains, discipline looks extreme. This is how weak mindsets spread, not through failure, but through imitation. One of the clearest markers of a controllable mind is emotional dependency, the need to be validated, the need to be understood, the need to be liked. These needs sound harmless, even human, but psychologically, they are leverage points. The moment your sense of worth depends on external approval, someone else gains the ability to influence your behavior. People who need validation explain themselves too much. They soften their opinions. They avoid conflict, even when conflict is necessary. Over time, this rewires the brain to associate safety with submission. The nervous system learns that compliance reduces discomfort, while assertion increases risk. This is not weakness by nature, it is learned behavior. Psychology calls this conditioned helplessness. When a person repeatedly learns that pushing back results in stress, rejection, or punishment, they stop pushing back entirely. Not because they can't, but because their mind no longer believes it's worth trying. That's why some people stay stuck in situations they hate, jobs they resent, relationships that drain them. Not because they are incapable of leaving, but because their identity has been trained to endure rather than act. Another trait of weak psychological structures is constant reactivity. Reactive minds are easy to steer. They respond emotionally before they think. They argue before they assess the power dynamic. In psychology, whoever reacts first usually loses control of the interaction. Calm is not just emotional stability. Calm is dominance. When someone can provoke you easily, they own part of your behavior. They don't need authority. They just need access to your emotional triggers. That's why disciplined individuals appear intimidating even when they say very little. Their lack of reaction forces others to adjust. Strong psychological positioning isn't loud, it's economical. Fewer words, slower movements, deliberate responses. The brain of the observer interprets this as confidence, even if no power has been demonstrated yet. Humans are wired to respect perceived certainty more than actual competence. This is where illusion becomes reality. Studies on authority perception show that people often follow those who appear composed over those who are technically more qualified, but visibly uncertain. The mind reads certainty as safety, and safety attracts followers. Weak minds, by contrast, leak information constantly. They overshare, they explain their plans, they vent publicly, they broadcast insecurities under the illusion of honesty. Psychologically, this strips them of mystery and leverage. When people know exactly what you think, want, and fear, they don't need to guess, and when guessing stops, so does respect. A strong psychological position is not built on secrecy for secrecy's sake. It's built on restraint, knowing what not to reveal, knowing when silence is more powerful than clarity. Another psychological trap that creates control is identity attachment. When a person ties their self-worth to labels, success, morality, intelligence, kindness, they become fragile. Any challenge to the label feels like a threat to survival. That's why insults hurt. That's why criticism destabilizes. That's why people defend themselves so aggressively. Secure minds don't cling to identities, they observe them. They can accept flaws without collapsing because their sense of self isn't dependent on perfection. This is why psychological resilience always begins with internal authority, the ability to decide who you are independent of external consensus. When that authority is missing, the mind looks outward for permission, and whoever provides it becomes powerful. Control thrives where self-trust is absent. Weak psychological structures also chase certainty. They need guarantees, outcomes, reassurance. But psychology is clear on this. Growth requires tolerance for uncertainty. Those who can sit in ambiguity without panicking develop adaptability. Those who can't become rigid, defensive, and predictable. Predictability is comfort, but it's also vulnerability. Anyone who can predict your reactions can manipulate them. Anyone who knows what you fear losing can threaten it. Anyone who understands your need for approval can withhold it. This is why psychological strength often feels lonely at first. When you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop performing, people notice. Some get uncomfortable, others get hostile, because your unpredictability disrupts their expectations. That discomfort is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign the power dynamic is shifting. Strong minds don't rush to be understood. They prioritize being grounded. They don't chase consensus. They observe it. They don't announce transformation. They demonstrate it over time. Psychologically, the most dangerous individual is not the loud one, the angry one, or the aggressive one. It's the person who doesn't need to prove anything. Their behavior is internally referenced. Their decisions aren't crowdsourced. Their emotions aren't easily accessed. They are difficult to move. The good news is this is not genetic. It's trainable. Psychological dominance is built through repetition, not motivation. Small acts of restraint, delayed responses, choosing silence over reaction, choosing discipline over emotional release. Each time you do this, the nervous system rewires. Over time, the mind stops defaulting to submission and starts defaulting to assessment. That's the shift. You stop asking, "How do I look?" and start asking, "What is actually happening here?" You stop reacting to pressure and start using it as information. You stop seeking comfort and start building control. This is not about cruelty, it's about clarity. A clear mind cannot be easily ruled. It doesn't confuse emotion with truth. It doesn't confuse approval with safety. And it doesn't confuse discomfort with danger. Most people will never do this work. They will choose familiarity over freedom, reaction over restraint, explanation over authority. But if you've followed this far, you already understand something most don't. Control begins in the mind. And once the mind is no longer available for manipulation, everything else changes.